name is Ken Dixon, and I serve as the Vice President for Communication and Public Relations for the Texas Conference. And today we're going to be talking about crisis. What do you do when the unthinkable happens? Well, today we're going to be looking at some of the best practices, some of the ways in which we can get through a crisis. By no means is this an exhaustive presentation, but I wanted to just present you some highlights. And we will definitely provide you later on the exhaustive presentation with all the elements to it. But today, just wanted to give you a brief overview of what do you do when a crisis strikes. So, knowing what to do when the unthinkable calls is something that is very crucial. As we think about what a crisis is, we have to remember that reputations are won and lost during a crisis. Our reputation as an organization are won and lost during a crisis. And so, what are the effective ways in which we can respond to a crisis? How do we go about doing that? What are some of the best practices in making sure that we can respond effectively? Well, first of all, you have to think about what are the crises that you've experienced. What are some of the things that you have gone through that has changed the way you or your organization or your school or church have been affected, the reputation by something that has happened at your institution. What has transpired? Well, today we're going to be looking at our agenda as we are focusing on what is a crisis, decision criteria, what next, and then we'll kind of look at some of the questions and answers, and then we'll conclude at that. So, first of all, we need to find out what is a crisis. Well, a crisis management is the management of choices at turning points. Crisis management is the management of choices at certain turning points. Well, a crisis means a choice. We have a decision to make at the most critical time and it can be the scariest time for us, but we have a decision to make. Now, I need to let you know, bad things happen, even to good people and good organizations. So you may not be singled out as, oh, woe is me. Your organization is probably an awesome organization, but unfortunately, bad things happen. And being a religious institution, we know that there is the devil who wants to destroy, kill, and eliminate anything that we do that is good. But we can get through any situation that may come. So then the question comes in is, what do we do? And what we do next counts. It's what we do next that really matters. It's what we do next that defines the reputation of our organization, our school, our church, our ministry, our organization. It is defined by what happens next. And so this means that we have to think about the management of choices. How you choose determines the outcomes. It is the decision criteria that matters. What you do next. And so therefore we must, kind of ask ourselves these questions about what do we do? What's next? What the big question in the room is what? Okay. Now, let me just let you know that the wrong question that we can ask with the what is, what should we do? That's wrong. We should not ask that question. What should we do? And I got even one worse for you. Even worse than that is, what should we say? Because when we're thinking about what we should do and what we should say, inevitably we may say and do the wrong thing at the wrong time. So we have to be careful in what we say and what we do. And so that brings us to this simple understanding that is important, that every crisis is a business or organizational problem before it is a communication problem. And guess what? You can't communicate your way out of a business or organizational problem. So how do we respond? What is the response that we should do? Okay. So our response is what we do plus what we say. Well, you may be saying, well, wait a minute. You just said that it's not about what we do, and even worse is what we say. Well, you have to think about it from the standpoint is you're putting both of these together. Uh, Individually, it may be terrible, but together you get a response. Albert Einstein once said, and speaking about managing your choices and asking the right question, he said that, in a quote, if I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on that solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. Wow. Can you imagine that? Spending the majority of your time thinking about what is the question? What is the proper questions to ask? And then you only take 5 minutes to respond. Well, the goal within a crisis is trust. We must not lose trust because when we lose trust, it is very hard to get trust back. Now, according to the Public Relations Society of America, the entity that gives me my credentials as well as certifications and also continuing training, has a code of ethics that we as practitioners, public relations practitioners, live by. And it is one of the code of ethics, one talks about trust. Trust is the natural consequences of expectations fulfilled. Trust results from having one's expectations met, of having no unrealistic expectation, or what we refer to as disappointments. So for us, it is important that we continue to maintain trust throughout a crisis. And so, what does that mean? We must ask the right questions. What would reasonable people appropriately expect a responsible organization to do in this situation? What would reasonable people think that you should do during this situation? What would they expect your organization, your church, your school, your ministry to do during this situation? Well, we can ask this question to a very granular level for each stakeholder group. What do I mean by that? Well, we can, when asking the right question, there must be a common understanding of the expectation that applies to all of the stakeholder groups. What does every group reasonably expect us to do as a responsible organization in the midst of a crisis? Well, let me tell you, it's not rocket science. It's simple. It's to show that we care. Every stakeholder group expects that you, the organization, will care about what's happening. And that's important because when each group has that expectation of caring, then now there's a trust that is built. Here's what I mean. The single biggest predictor of loss of trust, of reputation or harm, and the loss of competitive advantage in a crisis is the perception that you do not care. Wow. We cannot afford to act like we do not care about this situation. Now, the foundational strategy in crisis is that a timely demonstration that you care but it is also the persistent demonstration that you still care as long as the crisis lasts. As long as people expect you to care, you care. You should not just stop caring after 24 hours, 48 hours, because there's some things in crisis that are immediate. There's smoldering crisis, and then there's emerging crisis. Smoldering means that it's sitting there for a little bit. It lasts a lot longer, like a pandemic, smoldering. It continues to go on. Emerging means that somewhere down the road, it could erupt again. It could be a lawsuit where initially there was the immediate crisis, and then there was a person was taken into custody, and then there's this long duration before trial, and then it's so that's an emerging, and it continues to go on, but it's silent, and then all of a sudden it erupts again at a later date. So we must show that we care throughout that whole process. Now, the decision criteria we must ask, there is also the when. Okay. When do we show that we care? Well, first of all, there is the thing that we've all heard before: silence is golden. Well, in a crisis, silence is not golden. That is not your friend. Silence is not your friend. You do not need to try to, oh, let's not say anything and it'll go away. It will not go away. And the reason why it will not go away, because you're giving void, you're giving opportunities for your critics, for your adversaries to fill that void with their own information. And then they end up controlling the narrative. And then it also has this indifference will also look like there's an affirmation of guilt. And also you invite your critics and your opportunists to rally public opinion against you. You do not want that. You want to be able to control the narrative throughout a crisis. So a timely response, the when, is important. Now, but what about lawyers that say you can't say that? And you probably can't say that legally. But there is another way, because remember, every crisis is a business problem before it is a legal problem. So, yes, lawyers follow the law. They interpret the law for you to understand, but they don't necessarily live and work in the space of public opinion. That's where public relation practitioners work. So you may win legally, but you may lose in the court of public opinion. And so it is imperative and important that you understand that, yes, lawyers following the law, but it was a business problem before it became a legal problem. So what can we say? Well, here is an example of what is best practices of what you can say. Okay. The first thing is simply this: you acknowledge and express that the event or the issue happened. Secondly, you show empathy. You express the empathy if there were any victims or potential victims. Third, you express the values of the organization, that we care about what's happening. We use the values. Fourth, the approach and the action is to describe how we will address the crisis and the specific steps already taken in response to the event or the issue. And then fifth, we outline planned next steps for the organization and the potential next steps for stakeholders. Simple as that. And I did it in 5 different categories. Those can be 5 short paragraphs that you send out and share with your publics. So then there is also the understanding of the first mover advantage. Whoever is first to define the crisis, your motives, and your actions controls the interpretation of the event. So you have to be quick and move at the precise and the right time. Because if you don't, there is the golden hour. What do I mean by this? The golden hour is simply that if you refuse or you do not respond quick enough, as time goes on, the crisis will mount. Not in the same proportionate of you not responding, but it will incrementally increase based on your silence. Here's a graph that I will show you that the impact. If your response is within the first 45 minutes to an hour, the impact is less. But once you get to that 6 hour mark, you notice the color starts to change. It becomes even greater of a challenge. So that is why it's important in the first hour that you have done your due diligence, contacted the right people, and we'll talk about that in a second, about what you should say, what you should do, so that within that first hour of the crisis, you've already given a response, hopefully within the first 45 minutes. And there's some things that can be given that are called holding statements that will tie people over until the next event that you set up so that you can talk about the situation. But as you wait and hope and pray that it will go away, it will not. It will only get greater, and your reputation is now damaged. So here's some 4 questions you need to ask to find out if you should respond. These 4 question tests will give you the answer if you should respond. Will those who matter to us expect us to do or say something now? The second one is, will silence be seen either as indifference to harm the crisis is causing, or as an affirmation of guilt? Number 3, are others speaking about us now, shaping the perception of us among those who matter to us? And number 4, if we wait, will we lose the ability to influence the outcome? If you answer yes to any of those, then you need to respond now, within the appropriate time. So what now? Well, make sure that you and everyone is involved in a crisis is safe and secure. Then you contact the Texas Conference Office immediately. So number 1, make sure everybody's safe and secure. Send up a prayer asking the Lord to give you strength through this situation. Contact the Texas Conference Office. Document everything that happens. Make sure you document it. You can use your phone. You can do dictations. You can have a notepad and write everything out that you need, but write all information. You could never document too much information in the course of a crisis, because then you will always you will forget things later on, and so this will help you recall it. Then you want to get as much information about saying anything. Get as much information before saying anything to any various publics. We talked about that. Be careful what you say, when you say it, and how you say it. Number 6, if media is involved, immediately send them to our office at communication@texasda.org, or you can have them call me with my contact information. It is imperative that immediately, if any media shows up, bloggers, reporters, any of those things, contact you via phone, email, text, any of that, you send them directly to our office so that we can talk with them. You don't have to be nasty about it. Simply say, our spokesperson on this issue is the Texas Conference Communication Public Relations Office. Please make sure that you contact them, communication@texasda.org, or you can provide them with our phone number. But it's imperative that you do that. And please do not say no comment, because no comment is an affirmation of guilt. So just simply say, listen, this is an evolving situation. Please contact our spokesperson at the Texas Conference Office. Here is the number, here is the contact name, and here is the email address in which you can contact them. All right? And number 7, remember to show that you care often throughout the crisis. You can never show that you care too much. Now, in review, talking about what we've talked about thus far, simply that you have more control in a crisis than you may think. Trust is based on the fulfillment of expectations. Number 3, common expectation is that you care. People want to know that you care, and they should know that you care. Remember the first mover advantage and the golden hour. Remember, if you don't respond incrementally, it will get worse. So within that first 45 minutes, ideally, the first hour, a must, you want to have a response. And that response primarily will come from the Texas Conference Office in conjunction with you as well as your staff. And then number 6, show that you care quickly. And number 5, show that you care quickly. And number 6, continue to show that you care. It is imperative that when you do that, that people will understand. I want to thank you for the opportunity to sharing. And here's my contact information. If you have any questions or you need any more resources, please feel free to contact us here at the Texas Conference Communication and Public Relations Department. Thank you.